The word fell like a dropped plate. Failure. Margaret didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice was calm, practiced, sharp enough to cut without leaving a mark. Daniel sat at the dining table, shoulders squared, eyes steady as if the sentence had missed him. Inside, it hit hard. The room smelled of roasted chicken and old wood. The same smell from his childhood, and for a moment he felt 12 again, waiting to see if tonight would be kind. Margaret's gaze moved across the table, stopping on Daniel only long enough to measure him. "I just don't understand," she said, folding her napkin. "At your age, people build something. They don't drift." Her eyes slid to Mark, the younger son, who straightened a little, uncomfortable but quiet. Richard, their father, stared at his plate, pushing peas into neat lines like order could save him. Daniel nodded once. He had learned that nod. It meant "I hear you, and I won't fight." It had kept dinners short and arguments rare. He didn't want a scene. He had come to celebrate, to sit, to be present. That was always his mistake, thinking presence was enough. Margaret kept going. "I worry about you," she said, a soft lie wrapped in concern. "No house, no family, no real career. You're a good man, Daniel, but good intentions don't pay bills." The table went quiet. The clock ticked loud on the wall. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. He breathed out slowly and kept his hands still. If he spoke now, it would come out wrong. He looked at the window instead, at the dark yard, at the tree he used to climb when he was a boy. The bark still had the old scars. What Margaret didn't know sat heavy in his pocket, invisible as a secret. 2 hours earlier, Daniel had sent the last transfer. He had stared at the number before pressing confirm. Not because it was large, it always was, but because it was final. $61,000 over 2 years. Mortgage gaps, late fees, property taxes, notices that came in red ink and quiet threats. The house around them had been slipping, inch by inch, toward a locked door and a sign on the lawn. He had kept it afloat, alone. 2 years ago, the letters had started. Not to him, to them. Margaret had called Mark, not Daniel. She had said it was a temporary squeeze, nothing to worry about, but Mark had heard panic in her voice. Mark had called Daniel that night, whispering like the walls were listening. "Can you help?" he had asked. "Just for now." Then, after a pause, "Don't. Tell them it's you. Mom won't like it. She make it a thing." Daniel had agreed without thinking. He always did. He had told himself it was easier this way. He had told himself it didn't matter who got credit. He had told himself family was not a ledger. Now, sitting at the table, listening to his mother measure his worth, the lie pressed back. Margaret smiled at Mark. "At least you're focused," she said. "You've always been practical." Mark shifted again, eyes flicking to Daniel and away. Guilt moved across his face like a shadow. Passing clouds. He said nothing. Richard cleared his throat but didn't speak. He rarely did. He believed silence kept peace. Daniel had inherited that belief and paid for it often. Margaret turned back to Daniel. "You could learn from your brother," she said. "A man needs direction." Daniel's smile appeared on cue, thin and polite. He had practiced it in mirrors. After hard days, it was a shield. He lifted his glass and took a sip of water to give himself time. The water tasted flat. He wanted to say many things. He wanted to say he worked 2 jobs for months and slept 4 hours a night. He wanted to say he sold his car and walked to work to save money. He wanted to say he read every bank letter before they did. Learned words he never wanted to learn, and signed his name so their roof would stay. He said nothing. The conversation moved on. Dessert came out. Laughter appeared in small, forced bursts. Daniel stayed present. He asked questions. He listened. He watched the room like a guest in a museum. Careful not to touch. But something had changed. The insult had landed at the wrong time. It had found the truth and twisted it. For the first time, Daniel felt not just hurt, but used. He saw the pattern clearly, the calls that never came, the praise that never reached him, the comfort of his effort taken for granted. When dinner ended, Margaret hugged him with one arm. "I just want the best for you," she said into his shoulder. Daniel nodded again. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. He stood on the porch for a moment, looking back at the house. The lights were warm. The windows glowed. The place looked safe. He felt tired. On the drive home, the road was empty. Streetlights passed like slow thoughts. He replayed the word in his mind, not to torture himself, but to understand it. Failure. He tested it against facts, against hours worked, against money sent, against choices made. The word didn't fit. By the time he reached his apartment, the feeling had settled into something firm. Not rage, not sadness, resolve. He set his keys down and sat in the dark. He didn't turn on the lights. He let the quiet wrap around him. The truth had weight. He could feel it, solid and ready. He hadn't planned anything yet, but he knew. This much. Silence had cost him too much already. The house would stand tomorrow, because of him. Whether the lie would stand was another question. Sleep did not come easy after that dinner. Daniel lay on his bed, eyes open, counting the cracks in the ceiling like they might lead him somewhere else. The word his mother used stayed awake with him. It didn't shout anymore. It waited. By morning, it had changed shape. It wasn't pain now. It was pressure. Days passed, but the feeling followed him everywhere. At work, he moved on habit, answering emails, finishing tasks, nodding at coworkers. On the outside, nothing had changed. On the inside, every quiet moment filled with questions he had avoided for years. Why was he always the one who paid? And stayed silent? When did helping turn into erasing himself? Revenge appeared slowly, not as anger but as logic. It spoke in clear sentences. Tell the truth. Let them see. Let them feel it. The idea felt clean, almost responsible. Daniel told himself it wasn't revenge. It was balance. It was fairness. Still, the thought brought a sharp sense of control he hadn't felt before. He imagined the scene again and again. Not loud. Not messy. Just facts placed on the table. Numbers. Dates. Proof. He saw his mother's face when the story broke open. He saw his father finally look up. He saw his brother's silence turn heavy. The picture gave him a quiet rush, and that scared him more than anger ever had. Daniel knew his mother wasn't cruel in her own mind. She believed pressure built strength. She believed struggle shaped character. Her own life had taught her that love was earned through results. If she pushed, it was because she cared. That belief didn't excuse the harm, but it explained it. Knowing that made his choice harder. His father believed survival meant staying out of the storm. He thought if he didn't take sides, nothing would break. He never noticed that his silence always chose a side. Mark believed responsibility was something you passed along until it found someone strong enough to hold it. Daniel had always been. That someone. Daniel stood between them and himself. That was the real fight. One evening he opened his laptop and pulled up his bank records. He didn't rush. He reviewed each transfer, each date, each note. The list was long and plain. There was no drama in it, just proof of effort. He printed the pages and stacked them neatly. He told himself he was doing it in case the bank made a mistake. He knew that was a lie. As the papers stacked, so did the weight in his chest. Each page was a memory, a night shift, a skipped holiday, a promise he made to himself and broke. He felt proud and ashamed at the same time. Proud he had done it. Ashamed he had hidden. He stopped and asked himself a hard question. What did he want at the end of this? An apology? Respect? Relief? Or the look on his mother's face when her certainty cracked? That last thought burned. Daniel walked away from the desk and stood by the window. Cars passed below, lives moving forward without pause. He realized revenge didn't have to be loud to be real. It could be as simple as letting go and letting consequences arrive on their own. But letting go meant walking away without being seen, and he had done enough of that. He called Mark. The phone rang too long. When Mark answered, his voice was tense. Everything okay? Daniel kept his tone even. Why didn't you tell them it was me? Silence stretched. Mark sighed. I didn't think it mattered. It mattered to me. I was trying to protect you, Mark said quickly. Mom would have judged you. She'd ask questions. She'd never let it go. Daniel closed his eyes. She judged me anyway. Mark had no answer. He apologized, clumsy and rushed, promising to fix things someday. Daniel ended the call without anger. The truth was clear. Mark hadn't protected him. Mark had protected himself. That night, Daniel didn't sleep much, but his thoughts were sharper. He understood now that doing nothing was a choice, and it was the only one that kept hurting him. He didn't want to punish them. He wanted to stop being invisible. The plan formed without drama. He wouldn't confront them in private, where words could twist and soften. He wouldn't explode, because anger gave them something to dismiss. He would wait for the right moment, one where facts could not be ignored. Still, doubt followed him. He imagined the fallout. His mother's pride would take a blow. His father's quiet world would shake. The house might not be safe without his help. Was he ready to pull back and let them face that risk? He remembered the dinner table, the calm voice, the word that cut. Yes, he was. But even then, he wrestled with himself. He feared becoming what he hated, someone who used power to hurt. He told himself he would stop once the truth was known. No insults, no demands, just honesty and distance. That promise mattered. On a quiet morning, Daniel placed the folder in his bag before work. It felt heavier than paper. All day he carried it with him, aware of its presence. It was a line he could still choose not to cross. By evening, he knew the choice was coming. The pressure had turned into resolve. Revenge and self-respect stood close, almost touching. The difference between them would be decided not by what he revealed, but by how. And for the first time, Daniel understood that power didn't come from making others feel small. It came from refusing to stay silent any longer. The house looked the same when Daniel arrived for dinner, but it felt different. The walls stood firm, warm light spilling through the windows, unaware they were balanced on truth instead of bricks. Daniel parked the car and sat for a moment, his hand resting on the folder beside him. This was the point of no return. Once he stepped inside, silence would no longer protect anyone. Margaret greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She moved fast, directing plates, adjusting candles, keeping control. Richard sat at the head of the table, already tired. Mark arrived late, breathless, avoiding Daniel's gaze. No one spoke of money. No one ever did. Dinner began politely. Small talk filled the space. Daniel listened more than he spoke. Each sound felt sharp. Each laugh felt thin. He watched his mother closely, noticing how she straightened when she spoke, how certain she was of her place. She believed order came from authority, and authority came from never admitting weakness. Halfway through the meal, Margaret lifted her glass and smiled at Richard. "It's good to have family together," she said, "especially when some people finally get their priorities straight." Her eyes shifted to Mark. Praise followed. Then, like a habit she couldn't break, her gaze turned to Daniel. He felt the old pull to disappear. Instead, he stood. The chair scraped the floor, loud and final. Every head turned. Daniel's heart raced, but his voice stayed steady. "Before dessert," he said, "there's something we need to clear up." Margaret frowned. "Sit down. This isn't the time." "It is," Daniel said. He reached into his bag and placed the folder on the table. The sound was soft, but it cut through the room. He didn't open it yet. He looked at each of them, one by one. His father's confusion, his brother's fear, his mother's irritation. This house, Daniel said, was close to being taken. Richard straightened. "What are you talking about?" Daniel opened the folder and slid the first page forward. 2 years ago, payments started falling behind. Notices came. Deadlines passed. Margaret laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "That's not true." Daniel slid another page forward. Then another. Dates. Amounts. Clear and clean. "This is..." The room went quiet. Even the clock seemed to pause. Mark's face drained of color. Richard leaned in, reading slowly, understanding forming with every line. Margaret's smile vanished. "Why have I never seen this?" Daniel didn't look at Mark, but his words answered anyway. "Because I was asked not to tell you." Margaret turned sharply. "Mark?" Mark swallowed. "I thought it would be temporary," he said. "I didn't want to stress you." Daniel continued, voice calm. "Over 2 years I paid $61,000. Mortgage, fees, taxes, all of it. The number landed hard." Richard's hands shook. He pushed the papers back, stunned. "You did this?" Daniel nodded once. Margaret stood, chair hitting the floor. "Why would you hide something like this?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because I was told it would complicate things. Because I didn't want praise. And because I thought helping quietly was better than fighting." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, certainty left her face. She looked smaller. Not weak, but human. "You should have told me." Daniel felt the weight of that sentence. He could unload years of hurt right then. He could remind her of every insult, every moment she questioned his worth. The words lined up ready. Instead, he chose carefully. "I should not have been called a failure," he said. "Not while carrying this." The truth settled into the room like dust after a fall. No one moved. No one argued. Richard finally spoke, voice low. "I didn't know," he said. "I should have." Daniel nodded. "Yes." Mark looked up, eyes wet. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean." "I know what you meant," Daniel said. "That's why it hurts." Margaret sat down slowly. Her hands folded in her lap. She looked older in that moment, the armor gone. "I thought you needed pressure," she said. "I thought I was helping." Daniel took a breath. This was the edge. He could press harder. He could demand apologies. Gratitude, public admission. Revenge stood close, offering a final push. Instead, he closed the folder. I didn't come for that, he said. I came to end the lie. He picked up his coat. I won't be paying anymore. Not because I don't care, but because caring in silence nearly erased me. Margaret stood again, reaching out. We can talk about this. We are, Daniel, said gently. Just not the way we used to. He walked to the door. Behind him, no one stopped him. The house was quiet, heavy with truth. When he stepped outside, the night air hit his face, cold and clear dot as he drove away. Daniel didn't feel triumphant. He felt exposed, but beneath that was something solid. He had spoken without cruelty. He had chosen truth over punishment. The line had been crossed, not toward revenge, but toward himself. The quiet after the truth felt strange. Daniel expected chaos, anger, endless calls. Instead, there was space. The drive home that night passed without thought. The city lights blurred, and for the first time in years his chest didn't feel tight. He slept deeply, not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was hidden anymore. The next morning, his phone showed missed calls. His father, his mother, his brother. Daniel didn't answer. Not yet. He went to work, focused, steady. The world hadn't ended. That surprised him. For years, he believed speaking up would destroy everything. Now he saw how fragile the silence had been. Not the truth. By the second day, the messages changed. His father's voice was heavy, filled with regret. He admitted he should have paid more attention, should have asked harder questions. Daniel listened once, then saved the message and moved on. He didn't need to hear it again. The apology didn't erase the past, but it mattered that it existed. His mother didn't leave a message at first. That absence spoke louder than words. When she finally wrote, it wasn't long. She didn't defend herself. She didn't blame stress or fear. She said she had been wrong. She said she confused pressure with love. She said she didn't know how to face him yet. Daniel read the message twice and put the phone down. He felt no rush of victory, just a quiet understanding. She was learning, slowly, the way he had learned to survive quietly for years. Mark sent a long apology filled with regret and promises. Daniel believed some of it. He knew change didn't come from words alone. He didn't reply, not out of anger, but because he needed time to see who Mark chose to become when no one else carried the weight. Weeks passed. Daniel's life adjusted. Without the extra payments, his bank balance finally grew. He bought better food. He slept more. He walked lighter. The relief surprised him more than the money. He hadn't realized how much the burden shaped his days, until it was gone. Still, the questions came late at night. Had he gone too far? Had he hurt them the way he'd been hurt? He replayed the moment at the table, checking his tone, his words. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't insulted. He had told the truth and stepped away. That mattered. Revenge would have demanded more. He had chosen restraint. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Real paper. His mother's handwriting. Daniel opened it slowly. She wrote about her fears, about growing older, about believing control meant safety. She admitted she pushed him because she saw herself in him and didn't like the reminder of her own limits. She didn't ask forgiveness. She said she understood if he needed distance. Daniel folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. He felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Understanding didn't erase damage, but it softened the edges. He saw her not as an enemy, but as a flawed person who had never learned another way. Months later, he visited the house again, not for dinner, but to pick up a box of old things. The house looked the same, but the energy had shifted. Margaret spoke less. She listened more. Richard met Daniel's eyes now. Mark handled repairs, bills, responsibility. Not perfectly, but honestly, Daniel stayed only a short time. He didn't move back into old roles. When he left, he felt no pull to return. On the drive home, Daniel realized something simple. Revenge hadn't healed him. Distance had. Truth had. The power came not from making others feel small, but from refusing to shrink himself anymore. The house was still standing, but it no longer defined him. His worth wasn't measured by sacrifice or silence. It belonged to him alone, and that was enough.